Welcome to my video here on how to cheat in Final Fantasy VII Remake using Cheat Engine. If you're here for a console version of the game, these won't work for console because you actually have to be able to run the software with the game while you do it. So unless you're doing an emulator, it's not going to work. But if you're on PC, you come to the right place. So getting started here, some of the basic stuff here I'm not going to go over too much. So if you don't know how to pointer scan, if you don't know how to scan for, basic values, you may want to go look at some of my other videos just to get a background on how that stuff works. Although I'm going to just kind of briefly go over it here. The idea is that we're basically going to go through all these codes that I have already, and I'm going to show you how I got them and how to get them yourself, and you'll be able to get the ones for the other characters by doing the same process. So I've gotten to a place where I can attack things and things can hit me, and that's kind of what's important here. Because what we want to do is we want to find our health value. So that's a pretty easy thing to do. Generally, you're going to look at for a 4-byte value for most things. So we know our health is currently 4917, so we're just going to type in 4917, and we'll get a list of values. We wouldn't know what it is based on all that, so we'll just take some damage here. All right, good. So now we're at 4629, as you can see, 4629. Let me pull up Cheat Engine again. Oh, there is sort of a weird thing I forgot to mention. When you go to do this game, don't use this one under applications. Go under processes and make sure you pick the actual process, which is this one right here, this 5640. This other X that's running is kind of just like a front. I think that's maybe like a front end somewhere. I don't know exactly what it is, but it won't work if you try to use that. So make sure you pick the correct process to make this all work. I've taken some damage, so we're going to put in our new health value, which is 4629, and it limits the listing here down to 2 values. Most of the time when I'm searching for values, it's the most bottom value. Sometimes it could be the top, but it's usually the bottom. Now, the way you could test that is you could type in something else, and it'll immediately go back to the other value. Whereas if you go to this value and change it back to 4917, it immediately changes the other value to what it should be. So there you go. Now, we could stop there. I could just click this freeze button right here, and for the entire time I'm playing the game, for the rest of this, for the rest of the time I've got the program open, unless I change levels or load a save or something else weird happens, I'll have infinite health, essentially, right? There's a few caveats. One being, if you took more damage than you have health available, you'll still die. So that's not good enough. Also, every time you start the game or shut the game down, this address is actually going to change. So we want to make sure we get a pointer to this address so that every time we open the game, we always have this value ready to go, even though, you don't search for it every time. So we do that with a pointer. Pretty obvious how you do that. You right click, you get a pointer scan for address. You get this window here. You pretty much can leave all this default. I change the max level to 7 usually. It really depends on how far deep you want to go. Then you hit OK, and you'll save it to a file somewhere. Once you've saved the file, you can open said file. Let me go into my drive here and open up pointer scans. So each time I've done a pointer scan, I've saved it into a different file. Reason being, it is a much smarter idea to do it this way, because if you screw up one level, you can always go back. So this is just the way I do it, and it's only 4 kilobyte files here, so it's not like we're using up a bunch of hard drive space. Anyway, if you open up the most recent one that I've got here, you'll see there's a whole bunch of pointers. You have a ton of pointers, and some that are no longer good. This is a good time to show you how to do this. Once you shut the game down or restart your computer, the best way to do it is to restart your whole computer, then come back in and do this. But you basically want to find that value again, or if you know what your health is, you just reopen your pointer scan like I just did, and you go to pointer scanner and you go rescan memory. And you can either enter in the actual address if you know what the address is, but easier thing to do is you just put in what your current health value is. So 4917 is the current value. It's a 4-byte. Hit OK. It'll prompt you to save it to another location. I'm just going to increment this by 1. And there we go. So now it'll go through its rescanning, and once it's rescanned, you'll notice I now have about half of the number of possibilities I had before, about 4,000. And these are all functional, as opposed to some of them were not before, and you can tell because it actually has the correct address and the correct value. Now you can put in literally any of these, like this one for example, and it'll function. Now you don't know exactly which one it is that is actually going to work, so you just guess initially, and if you find that the value at some point becomes invalid, you can just go back in here, rescan for your pointers, and find a new one that works. That's pretty much it. Now, what I did to get the MP was I took a wild guess. Essentially, I double-clicked this again, brought one of these new ones in, and then I double-clicked the pointer address, and I just went up to this last offset here, and I clicked right once or twice, and noticed, oh look, here's the value 122 that matches my health, or my MP. Okay, cool. I wonder if that's my MP. And checked it, and yeah, it's the MP. So there you go. And then I also kept going and found another value that was here. I found this one, and I was like, I changed the float and noticed, okay, we're at like 3.6. Was it float? Oh no, sorry, it was the C4. That's what it was. So I figured my ATB gauge down here was going to be a floating number. Floating point number is basically a decimal. I figured that because generally any bar is going to be a floating point. So I changed it to float and then scanned through until I found a number that looked like it would be the ATB. And I looked at when my ATB was full and figured, okay, there's 2 bars here. It's either going to be 100 or 200, most likely, because that's just typically how they work. When they do percentages, which is what they do with the bars here, this is likely supposed to be 100.0%, or 200.0%, because you have 100% of 2 gauges. However they rationalize that out, that's what I figured. That's how I got all 3 of these, and that's pretty quick and easy to do. The next part is where it gets a little bit complicated. I'm going to close all this because it's no longer necessary. So this is where you have to get a little bit weird. Now you can't do this next step on a pointer. You have to do it on the actual address. So if you were to lose this address, you would just go and open your pointer, and then you can copy that address, and then just go to add address manually, paste it in, and then you'll have a listing here with the address that you're looking for. Now, the other thing I wanted to do besides, not have to search for the value over and again was basically make it so I just don't take damage. So when Cloud gets hit, I don't want him to take any damage. So how do I do that? Well, it's pretty easy. You want to do this right here. Find out what writes to this address. So it'll ask you if you want to attach the debugger. Yes. Then you'll get a blank opcode window here. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go in, take some damage. That's 1 hit. That's 2 hits, and okay, 2 hits. So I took 2 hits there, and let's see. On my opcode window here, I see 2 changes to the value. So I know exactly what those 2 things were. That was the 2 hits. So this opcode is run every time I take damage. So what can we do about that? So if we go to show disassembler with this highlighted, we can see that this is basically taking these 2 addresses here, RCX, RAX, plus an offset of 30, and moving them to EDI. This is basically it taking the damage values and adding them into your health, essentially, to make it as simple as possible explaining that. If you really want to know what all these opcodes mean, like popping stacks and all this other stuff, you can just go ahead and Google that. I'm not going to explain it all. It's too in depth. What you can do here, though, to test this, whether or not this is what we want it to do, we can do replace with code that does nothing. So that basically knops out those lines of code. Now, what will that do for us? Well, I'll show you. Unpause the game, take some damage, and as you can see, health does not go down at all. I can actually unfreeze the value here and remove that entirely. I don't need it. And you'll see that I'm just not taking any damage. Now, sometimes what you'll find is when you do stuff like this, if you knock out code like that in a very, that's a really quick and dirty way of doing this. If you do it that way, sometimes nothing will take damage. So you'll hit the enemies and they won't take damage either. In this case, this game doesn't handle the code that way. It actually handles it in such a way that it only applies that code to your characters. So the code that handles damage to all of your characters is unique to your characters, and the code that handles damage to enemy characters is unique to the enemy characters. So from that, we can basically, kind of the same way we did a pointer scan, we're going to make a assembly script that is going to basically search for this address so that every time you start the game, you already have the address available and you can just check a box and you're now invincible. So what we'll do is we'll go back to restore with original code. So the code is back, and as you can see, you take damage again. So what we'll do is we will go to tools with that line highlighted, by the way, and we'll go to auto assemble. That'll bring up this auto assemble window, which is blank. There's plenty of useful templates in here. I wouldn't use full injection because there's stuff in there that doesn't work right, and you have to edit it a lot. So I just go with AOB injection. You can leave most of this default, and I'll call this, in each one of these scripts that you have to do, you have to give this a unique symbol. So if you leave this all as just inject, then when you do one of these, it'll confuse the code really bad. So what you want to do is just name one of these different every time. So I'm going to call this one cloud because I haven't used that yet. I'm just going to call it inject cloud, and then OK. And that'll basically fill in everything you need for your own code injection here. Now, what you have to care about is what happens under new mem. So what's going to happen here is when it goes to run that code, it's going to go to new mem first, and if it doesn't see anything there, or if it doesn't jump anywhere afterwards, it's going to go to the next section of the code, which is the original instructions, which was the move RCX RAX, and then move RBX RSP plus 30, and then it's going to jump to return. So it basically ends that code and goes back to whatever else it was doing. Instead of doing this code part right here, we're just going to tell it to jump to return. And that's it. We don't need to do anything else. Because we're going to go in here and go to assign. Don't save, don't execute. You want to assign to current cheat table. Okay, so we will close that out. And now we have this script here. This is our script. And you can double click that and make changes and edit things later if you want to. And that's pretty much it. That's all you really have to do. Here you can now check that box, and I'll get this window out of the way. And as you can see, when we uncheck or check that box, check the box, it changes the code, tells it to jump to a new place, which is our little code cave that we've created, where it will now do the code we want it to do instead of doing the code that it normally would do. And when we uncheck it, it goes right back to normal. So on, and we'll check, does it work? And yes, it works. Great. So there we go. And then we can uncheck it and back to normal. Now I'm going to remove this because I already have that same code up here. It does the exact same thing. If you're wondering how it does this specifically, I'll just briefly run over that. If you look in the script here, it does this command right here, AOB scan module. It's going to our reference on this particular process, and it's looking for this array of bytes right here. That array of bytes should be unique. In this case, it is. Sometimes it isn't going to be. You may run into instances where like you put in this and that's not always the same. It's pretty uncommon for it to be that way, but sometimes it does happen. If that's the case, you can always put in a star for characters that you don't know. But since I know what it is, I'm just going to leave it like that. I know this works. So there you go. And that pretty much covers that. There's also the infinite MP. I did the exact same thing to find that. Find out what writes to this address, and I changed it. Now, the one I didn't do that way was the ATB gauge. The reason I didn't do it that way is because the code for that one is a lot different. It's actually doing move SS, and it's doing some other stuff with the value, and I just have no interest in messing with that and trying to, like, you can use that to increase the value quicker if you wanted to, but at the end of the day, what I really want to happen is just to have ATB always full. So to do that, you just freeze the value. I mean, that's all you have to do. You don't have to do anything else to it. And there's not really ever going to be a point where you're going to die because your ATP gauge goes to 0. So that didn't matter. This is a much easier way to do it. Now you can do the exact same thing for all of your characters, just like I just did, and you'll be able to get these values for everybody. I actually can remove the infinite MP, or the part that says cloud, because these codes actually apply to everyone. Well, at least the invincibility applies to all of your characters. The infinite MP may not. I don't know yet. I haven't actually tested that out with the Tifa in the party, but I'm sure it's probably fine. Now, that being said, there's a couple other codes you might want to be able to get, and they're all pretty easy as well. Need to get out of battle here real quick, so we'll just do that. Cast spell, kill this guy, and boom, done. All right. So you'll notice a second ago there was a little pop-up that said what your experience gained was. That's actually very important for the experience code. So if you want to level up all of your characters to max level immediately, see how I have a ridiculous amount of experience? Yeah, the way you do that is this experience value here is not actually something you can search for the way it is. You have to you have to basically do an unknown initial value search. So do a new scan. It is a 4-byte, by the way. But you do unknown initial value. And then what you'll do is every time your experience goes up, and you see that window over here that says gained whatever experience, you go into here and go increase value by whatever you gained experience for. I'm not going to demonstrate because I don't want to keep killing things just to prove the point. It's not very complicated. It's very simple. You do that a couple times, and you will find your experience value, and then just set your experience value to something ridiculous, and you'll jump right up to level 50. You can actually do all 3 characters at once if you wanted to, because they're getting the same number of experience points, so it's very simple to find that value. The other value that is very easy to find is actually your gil down here. There's not much to that other than type in your amount of money, and like I said before, it's usually the bottom value. So if I make this 99999, and then I'll close the menu, reopen it, and still got 989808. Let's see. Is it the middle one or is it the top one? This game's gonna make a liar out of me, isn't it? Oh, it's the. Let's see. Oh, it's the top one this time, isn't it? I bet it's the top one. Because this game wants to make me a liar today. Yep, there was the top one. So, there you go. There's the exception to the rule. Sometimes it is, in fact, the top value. Anyway, that's pretty much how you find it, or find all your values. Very simple. Not really a whole lot to it. Just going to set all my values to max here. And yeah, that's basically all. The one thing that I haven't bothered to really find is if you go into upgrade weapons and looking for this SP number for each weapon. This number does not seem to be a simple, you find the number and then do whatever you want, change to whatever you want. You may actually have to do some unknown initial value and change the value that way, or find the value that way. Because I haven't bothered to look for it because I haven't really cared that much. Honestly, it's pretty easy to level that up anyway. You get most of the points you need from leveling up to 50 anyhow. So that's pretty much it. I think I've covered most of it. The only other thing is leveling up materia. That's a little bit more complicated because of the fact that you have to do each individual materia. But again, it's very similar to how you do the characters. If you do unknown initial value searches and then you do increased value by whatever you see for gained whatever AP, you'll get every materia that is currently in use on your characters. So you can basically just go through each of those values and set them all to 10,000 probably, and everything will immediately max out to 3 stars or 4 stars, 5 stars, whatever the case is. And that should be all you got to do. So hopefully you found all this information useful. You'll be able to use it yourselves to make the game a little bit more entertaining once you've beaten it like I have. And that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. If you got questions, put them down in the comments. Until the next time, try not to die.